Hey guys, welcome back to the Loopcast. This week is going to be a little different. So, we have a very, very special guest this week. His name's Mark Houck. So, as many of you know, we followed this case very closely from the raid to the trial to him being acquitted. And we actually had the honor of bringing him on for a full interview, a full 40 minutes of him telling us what actually happened, the full story, how he felt, and what's going on here in the future, what the future holds here for Mark Houck. So, really honored to have him on, voted Catholic Vote Hero of the Year, a true inspiration to us here at Catholic Vote, and we hope that this interview is able to inspire you as well. Don't worry, we still will have the Twilight Zone at the end of the episode, so make sure you listen to the end to hear all your favorite crazy takes of the week. Enjoy the interview.
My guest today is co-founder and the president of King's Men. He is an author, lecturer, radio host, activist, and passionate Catholic, and I will add husband and father of 7 children here on Earth. Mark, since 2006, has been speaking to thousands of men about a variety of topics related to the development of authentic masculinity. I'm a huge fan of authentic masculinity. Mark made national headlines this past fall after heavily armed federal agents stormed his home at dawn on September 23rd, scaring his family, pointing guns at his head, and then arresting him in front of his wife and 7 young children. He was charged unjustly with violation of the FACE Act, which we have discussed in detail on this program several times, all for defending his 12-year-old son from an aggressive clinic escort at a Planned Parenthood abortuary. Mark was cleared of all charges. Praise be to God. He lives with his wife, Ryan Marie, and their children in Pennsylvania, and he's here today to discuss the experience and what's next. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you and big fan of Catholic Vote, so thank you.
Oh, it's such an honor to have you. I have to admit that I had a lot of jealous colleagues and coworkers in the office as we were leading up to this interview. They're like, oh my gosh, you get to talk to Mark. So
Thanks, Erica. I appreciate that. Just the way I wrote it. Thanks for writing it.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm really good at reading off a script. No, but really, everyone just wants you to know how many prayers we've been offering for you. And we were so glad everyone just celebrated when we heard about the exoneration. So first, I think most of our listeners are really familiar with the story, but for those who aren't, would you just take us back to that September morning? What happened? What did you see? And really, what were your thoughts as all this was going down and you were driven away in this FBI convoy?
Sure. So it's as if it happened yesterday, so it's very, very fresh still. It was a Friday morning, September 23rd, and 6:40 in the morning. I was awake early to help get the family ready for our normal co-op homeschool day. And so, as a guy who is a nonprofit guy, works for himself, I'm able to help. I teach a couple classes, and I was preparing for that day. So I went downstairs to put a quiche in the oven to have a quick breakfast for the kids. And then around 6:50, close to 7 o'clock, I hear a bang at the door, a very large bang at my door, over and over again. And the doorbell is pressed multiple times. So the whole house is lit up in noise. And the person behind the door yells, "Open up." Now, if I'm an FBI, which I learned it was an FBI, usually would probably announce who you are. But they just said, "Open up." If I was a normal gun carrier in the state of Pennsylvania, most people probably would have come to the door with a gun in their hand because
Oh my gosh.
it was that disruptive. Thankfully, I had no guns. I love guns, but I don't carry guns, and I am a Second Amendment supporter.
Yep,
But
totally.
I went to the door and I said, well, "Who is it?" And they banged again and said, "Open up, it's the FBI." So now you got to remember that I wasn't expecting the FBI to show up on my doorstep that day. My attorney with the Thomas More Society, Matt Heffron, former federal prosecutor, had told the assistant U.S. attorney when I was given papers saying I was a target of a grand jury investigation that my client would come in peacefully. There's no need to bring an agent out to the home. So you got to remember, I wasn't expecting this. I had heard from my attorney in August, and he said, "Have you heard from the AUSA, the assistant U.S. attorney in the Eastern District?" And I said, "No, have you?" And he said, "No, she won't return my calls." So both of us were thinking that this was a done deal, that everything was over. It already had been dismissed at the municipal state level. So we just figured life was going to proceed. So when I get the FBI announcing themselves at my door, you got to remember, I'm not thinking this is a pro-life issue. I'm thinking something else.
Uh-huh.
Well, I said, okay, stay calm. I'm going to open up the door, but stay calm, please. I have 7 babies in this house.
Uh-huh.
So as I opened up the door, I showed them my hands because I knew that would be important. I used to be in juvenile justice, so I have an idea of just protocol. And as I came out, I could not believe the circus, which was my yard. I have 100 yards to my road from my house.
Mhm.
That was lined with marked and unmarked units. I have a little bit of a cul-de-sac, which is my house, where my house dead ends, and there were cars all over that. And then there were cars marked and unmarked units parked to the side of my house on my grass. And then there's just a litter of agents and state troopers. I'm going to say 20 plus PA state troopers in total with the federal agents.
Mhm.
And I said what any man would say, "What are you doing here?" That's what I said. And they said, "Well, you know why we're here." And I said,
I really don't.
"Well, I didn't." And I said, "Oh, you're here because
Wow.
I rescue babies." Now I start, and then I have my hands up, and I'll just share with you what I said. I said, "You wouldn't be here if the Trump administration was in the White House." And I
Oof.
looked at all of them when I said that, and they all kind of put their head down a little bit, with the exception of maybe the lead agent. At this point, my wife is coming, and my children are stirring, and they're in the
Mm.
threshold of the home, and the guns are pointed at me. Now, these are M16 guns. What I'm looking at is full ballistic helmets and shields, heavily armored vests, and a battering ram.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
like looking at. If I didn't open the door, they were coming in. But we
Wow.
opened the door, and the guns were pointed at me and in the threshold of the home. My wife comes down and says, "Do you have a warrant for his arrest?" And the lead agent says, "We're taking him with or without a warrant." That's what the
Ugh.
FBI said. So I don't know if you have any follow-up with that, but they proceeded to put me in custody after a couple of
Yeah.
changes.
Just absolutely stunning. And I mean, you say you're getting ready for homeschool co-op. That's what we do every week in our house. I mean, it's sort of it's unbelievable that this would happen in the United States of America in a way that I grew up in. So just hearing you say, I mean, I've read the reports. I've been following this story since the beginning. And just to hear you say it, though, it really drives it home that you are just an everyday Catholic family that serving the Lord, serving the church, and that this can happen. I guess, what was it like in that car with the FBI agents? How do you look at these guys that, in a way, as Catholics, we're very supportive of law enforcement. We like military. A lot of people in the military and law enforcement are Catholic.
Sure.
So how do you look at these guys who, in a way, could just say, well, I'm just doing my job, right?
Right.
What's your thought when you actually think about these individual men who could do that to a family?
Right. Yeah, you do have to take some pause. I'll tell you what it was like when I got in the car. First of all, I said, "Could I put some clothes on?" I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. They would not allow me to do that. When an agent comes to your house, they'll
Yeah,
usually let you finish your coffee and, pack your
right.
bag, whatever you need to do. In this case, they didn't want to have any of that. They did let me take my rosary, though, which was kind of fun. I did have my rosary with me.
That's like Gandalf with his staff. It's
It
like, you
is
were
now.
supposed to take his staff. And you're like, they
Well,
were supposed to
this
take
is
his
the one.
rosary.
So I didn't
Very
have
Lord
any
of the Rings.
clothing, but
Love
I
it.
had a weapon with me.
That's right.
When I got in the car, Erica, I said, "You got to tell me why 30? Why 30 of you? Tell me."
Yeah.
And the one agent who was driving, he was from St. Louis. He
Hmm.
said, "Well, sir, when we get a warrant for an arrest, we don't know anything about you. We come prepared for anything." Now, I said,
Huh.
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
I said, "The FBI doesn't move without knowing something." I said, "But that's okay." I said, "Look, we talked about homeschooling. I didn't push it. We talked about homeschooling. We talked about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh my
Talked
goodness.
about anything and everything." That agent, when we got down to the federal building, reached his hand out before he left, and he said he wasn't the lead agent. He was just a
Hmm.
driver. He said, "It was a real pleasure meeting you."
Oh, wow.
So you see the humanity of the
Yeah.
people. I know a lot of them are victims. Some of them are. I think they all had a choice, though. And they're
Uh-huh.
not without choice. No one took that choice away from them. We know state troopers who were given an invitation to be there that day that
Hmm.
declined to go because they said,
Wow.
"Oh, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that."
Wow.
And the FBI had the same option too.
Hmm.
So, yeah, they need to be held accountable for that.
Yeah. That's intense. And, looking at having children myself, I have 6 children, and the possibility of them going into law enforcement or military and being faced with those choices, it's preparing your kids to remember their agency and their, you can decline, you have choice. You don't
Right.
have to go along with this because you don't know who's going to be in power in the White House or
That's
other
right.
elsewhere. Um, so I wanted to ask you, got the rosary out there. I do remember, I believe September 23rd is Padre Pio's feast day.
It was.
I
Yes.
remember looking at it. I'm like, it's his feet because it's my daughter's confirmation saint, it's Padre Pio, and
Oh,
we were
wow.
celebrating that morning when we saw the news breaking, and I was like, well, at least Padre Pio's in charge of this. Do you have any other patron saints for your family who you were, praying to during this time and reaching out
Oh,
to?
that did bring us right to the moment, right? There was a big
Sure.
surrender moment, letting go of what I could not control, letting go of inability to provide for my family, to protect them. When I got to the federal building, I was fingerprinted, and then they cuffed me in my on my hands. Of course, I was
Mm,
already cuffed. They recuffed me, and then they belt shackled me, put a shackle around my waist, and they shackled my feet.
mm.
Now now I'm shimmying to a white room with just a desk, and they chained me to a table for 6 hours.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
at that point, I started to call upon all the saints that I ever knew in my journey, that were incarcerated or in prison. Of course, Maximilian Kolbe. I have a great
Mm,
devotion to Saint Maximilian. In fact, I was born on Saint Maximilian's feast day, August 4th.
beautiful.
Of course, I thought about Saint Paul. I thought about Saint
Mm,
Peter. I thought about all the apostles and the early martyrs. And I invoked all of them and their intercession. Saint Michael was, of course, very real to me.
mhm,
My guardian angel was real to me. My patron, Saint Mark. Saint Augustine is the patron of the king's men, the apostle.
mhm,
So for 6 hours, Erica, I prayed nonstop. I prayed without ceasing every mystery of
mm,
the rosary, every devotional I ever thought of, any saint that ever suffered some sort of persecution. Of course, our Lord. I was at the foot of Calvary. Now, this was the most profound element of all of it. I felt so close to Jesus in the midst of this minor suffering compared to what he
mhm,
had. You can't even begin to compare it. But I
mhm.
was at the foot of the cross. I could feel, if I reached out, I would get a splinter on my hand. That's how close I was to the wood. I could
Wow.
feel his presence. I could feel his peace. I could feel his love. And I had joy. I mean, you
Mhm.
read in St. James, the apostles considered it pure joy that they could suffer for the name. Well, I can totally resonate with that because I
Yep.
totally felt joy. And,
Yeah.
they could kept me there for all day for all I cared. I was at peace. I knew my wife and children were being taken care of because the Lord is faithful to his promises. And
Right.
I knew that all I had to do was be still. And they kept coming, you want something to eat? No, I was in such ecstasy in a way with it that I didn't want to be bothered with food or nothing. I
Yeah.
just wanted to, and now they tried to manipulate and coerce me and get information out of me that I was not comfortable giving up, which they said I had permission not to give up, but they
Mhm.
did that anyway. Then they brought me to the US Marshals in the shackles, and I said, "Is this really necessary?" I'm, like,
Wow.
shimmying my feet, and it's on bare ankles, so
Are you still in your shorts at this point too?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
of
oh my
course,
goodness.
of course. So they didn't let me get dressed. In fact, I think they gave me a sweatshirt and, but yeah, my ankles are bare and we're going down to the US Marshals, and you know what? I was treated like a
Mm,
convicted felon, and that's how they
yeah.
treated you.
Yep.
And some people, I think Steve Bannon said I was treated like an animal.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe animals would get better treatment with the way the
I
law.
think maybe the Humane Society is more
That's right.
humane. But, wow. So I wanted to tie this into, a lot of some of the other machinations of the Biden administration right now. So we just got word, recently that they're attempting to rescind the conscience protections for healthcare workers. They're attempting to reinstate the Obamacare contraceptive mandate, which was what brought the Little Sisters of the Poor to the Supreme Court. So, there are a lot of Catholics right now especially doctors, nurses, pharmacists, who are perhaps facing the possibility of really suffering for their conscience and standing up for their faith and refusing to be a part of the abortion culture that we live in and the culture of death. And so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to, what would you say to those who are looking at this right now? They're thinking, how am I going to feed my family? How am I
Right.
going to continue my career? And just that fear. How do they prepare for something like what you went through? Hopefully nothing as dramatic, but it is possible. What would you say to them right now?
Well, I mean, you can't live in fear. We can't live in fear as Americans, as Catholics. Jesus says, don't prepare your defense before you go before the king and the magistrate. Just I will give you the words that you need. And so, in that regard, you have to see that God is going to provide everything you need, no matter what happens to you, no matter what besets you. That
Mhm.
He goes before you always and prepares you for that journey. And remember, you don't get the grace for martyrdom until you're about to be martyred. And
Right.
so, there was a white martyrdom that I was
Mhm.
experiencing, dying to myself, dying to my freedom that was being taken away. As you correctly said, you can take my freedom away, put me in jail, but I'm inwardly free. I don't
Yeah.
need, even if I was put in jail, I still claim my own freedom,
Mhm.
live in Christ. And so, to suffer in that way, there's a great gift in it. So I think Catholics need not be afraid of it. They need not seek it. It will come. Persecutions are going to come, but don't be afraid because this is the time we are made for as Catholics. For such a time as this, the Catholics of this generation, this is our battle, right? This is what we're called to engage in. And so we're being summoned forth to proclaim Christ, to live for Christ, and to die for Christ. And most of us will experience that through a white martyrdom at worst.
Right.
But remember, the grace doesn't come till the moment. So try to prepare yourself for it. Yeah, you better be praying. Yeah, you better be staying close to the sacraments. Yeah, you better learn how to fast and deny yourself. But when it comes, God will pour out an abundance of grace upon you. And you just need to remain still and let Him do the fighting for you. And that's kind of what I had to do the last 4+ months. I had to shut up. I couldn't speak. No one was going to let me talk. And, I had to just wait. I just had to wait
Right.
upon the Lord, so that's the best
Wow.
advice. There's a lot of advice in there, but that's the best advice.
That sounds great. So, in terms of the last 4 months, so leading up to the trial, what was that like? What kind of preparation were you undergoing for testimony? Um, and working with the Thomas More Society, again, huge shout out to those guys and women on that team.
Sure.
Thank you for all you do. But what was that preparation like? Was it a lot of going back and recounting what happened and watching tapes, or what did that do? Like, what would it look like?
Sure, sure. So Brian McMonagle was the lead attorney and, Thomas More Society. So Brian is his own private attorney, and he was my lead counsel, and he's from Philadelphia. So him and the Thomas More Society were working together. So they were
Okay.
great together, phenomenal. And Thomas More is the cavalry, right? They're coming to rescue everybody. So you got them on the side. So there was a little bit of prep initially. Once we had secured the attorneys, they flew out Thomas More Society, Peter Breen, and there was some initial prep there. And then as we got closer, about a month out, then there was more prep. There was more prep with my son, and that was just to review, what our testimony is. And they had to ask me, do you want to go on the stand? Do you want to give testimony? When the federal government comes after anybody, they have a 98% conviction rate. Okay,
Wow.
most defendants
I did not know that.
yeah, most defendants never go on the stand when the federal government comes after them. Why? Because they're probably most likely guilty. So they'll
Huh.
usually take a plea agreement. Now, I said to my attorneys, I said to Brian and Peter, I said, is the government going to come in with a plea agreement? And they said, well, no, Mark, that's got to come from you. I said, well, I ain't going to ask for a plea agreement. I'm innocent. And they said, well, then they're not going to probably come forward. Well, lo and behold, on January 6th of all days, Friday afternoon, the assistant U.S. attorney sends an email to my attorney and says, we have a plea, 0 to 6 months, no probation, and plead guilty to count 2 of the 2 charges I was charged with against faith.
Huh. So
And
just to be clear, just to set this up though, the plea agreement was 6 to 12 months in
no, 0 to
prison.
6. 0 to 6 months.
0 to 6 months in prison. And what you were facing if you were convicted
It's
was
11
up to
years.
11 years. So your
And
deal was up.
$250,000
Okay.
fine and 3 years probation. Yeah.
All right. So they're now thinking, all right, we'll give him 6 months max
And
versus
it's all
11, the
dependent
risk
on
of
the judge.
11.
Exactly.
Okay.
The judge might say, hey, 0 time. They
Okay.
may give you no time.
So
And
you get this option, and did you even think of taking it?
Well, first of all, what does that tell you? It says that the government had a flimsy case and they wanted just a conviction. They didn't even care at this point. They knew their case was weak. Absolutely not. I was not going to take a plea. And 1, I wouldn't take a plea, 1, because I'm innocent. 2, because my wife would never let me come home, face the children again, because
I like her.
she was not going to have it.
Can I talk to her? I was kidding.
And 3, we needed case law. The pro-life
Yeah.
movement needed case law. So if
Yeah.
I took that conviction, then the Biden DOJ would go after the next pro-lifer and
Yeah.
apply the same thing, and they'd already have that conviction behind them. If I got
Right.
this in the books, USA versus Houck, and now we have case law supporting our case. If this happens to anyone, God forbid, again, or they try to go after anyone in this way and again, it's going to be thrown out of court because there's case law against it. So we knew we were risking something, but so the assistant USA says to my attorney, we need to know by Monday, the following Monday. This is Friday afternoon. Well, my attorney was so annoyed by that. He called on Tuesday and said, we're not taking the plea. And they said, well, are you sure? Like, did you talk to your client? And he
Yeah, I
said,
did.
of course I talked to my client. I'm not speaking at a turn here. My client's not interested. So we weren't interested in that. But I just think your audience needs to know that this is how the government felt about their case.
Yeah, no, that's really important because I think very few of us have even thought about this kind of process and what it looks like and what's the game here.
Sure.
And you've given us this window inside, which is super important. I want to go back to your son's testimony, actually. That's got to be my favorite part of the trial. I mean, he's 14 now, right? He was 12 at the time of the incident. And I mean, so in a sense, did you have a choice to have him go on the stand or not? And what went into that decision to put him up there as a witness?
Absolutely. Ryan Marie, my wife, and I had a choice. And we asked Mark, how do you feel? How do you feel about giving testimony? And he said, I want to. So he was all in. Mark's a stud. A 12-year-old boy.
He's a great guy.
And he got on the stand, and I know you have questions about it, but he was magnificent. I talked to my attorney. I said, hey, what'd you think? He said, you were good, Mark, but your son was better.
That's like a dad wants to hear, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's a wonderful, wonderful moment. Yeah, so for him, I think just for the listeners who maybe don't know, he gets up on the stand and they cross-examine him, right? And what was the cross-examination like? Just from, you were in the courtroom, so.
Right. So, the direct examination is his own attorney, and he's reviewing everything with him. And of course, the cross-examination is trying to rebut all that, make it look like he's lying or make it look like somehow he's not giving truthful testimony. And so the line of questioning from the assistant to the main prosecutor, who's the main guy in Washington, D.C., who wrote the manual on the FACE Act for the DOJ, he's very polite to Mark. He says, "Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Mark. How are you?" And Mark says, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Patel." And he's very poised on the stand. And do you love your dad, don't you? Yes, I love my dad. Do you do anything for your dad? Yes. You want to be like your dad? Yes. You ever seen your dad get angry? Yes. Is this the only time he's ever been angry? He's like, no, my dad's been angry before. And, they try to trip him up, but he's listening and he's responding appropriately. And he's got good thought and he's thinking, okay, no, that's not true. But eventually they get to the break where they're trying to imply that he's going to lie for his father on the stand.
Yeah.
And the question is posed, well, was your testimony prepped by your attorney? Yes. And what did your attorney tell you? My attorney told me to tell the truth.
So that was the best moment for me. I mean, and just as a parent.
It was great for me too.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, congratulations. I know it's all grace, but to have a child, you know, testify in that way, that's just the greatest. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, Other than that, you come out, and I mean, we were at Catholic Vote, we're such junkies, but we were all gathered around Twitter and watching all of the people come out of the courthouse and the prayer. And you spoke a little bit to the role that your faith played in sustaining you all through this. And I don't know if you could just speak a little to, what was that prayer of Thanksgiving like for you and for Ryan Marie,
Mm.
realizing he saw us through. This was not the end. I'm going home. I can continue to support my family. Um, yeah,
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to take you to that experience. It's only a week removed, right?
I
This
know.
3 o'clock. This is when the verdict came down a week. How about that? 3 o'clock hour is
Yeah,
when the
hour of
verdict came
mercy.
for divine mercy, right? So this
Yeah.
stuff isn't lost on us as Catholics, and it's not
Uh-huh.
lost on me, and it wasn't lost on me the journey, which for me was the Stations of the Cross, beginning with Pontius Pilate. The arrest was Gethsemane, but all the way up to the trial was taking me all the way up to station 12, Jesus
Mhm.
crucified. Walking up to that stand, that wooden box, Jesus being raised on wood, and Mark and I going up to the
Mhm.
wooden box and exposing ourselves, exposing ourselves to the truth, and being humiliated to a degree,
Uh-huh.
both of us. It was surreal. It was the most profound, probably, moment of his young life. For me, it was a beautiful encounter again with God. Um, the greatest words were, "Mr. Houck, you're free to go." That was when I heard the not guilty. I was preparing my heart for a guilty conviction,
Yeah.
and I just kept saying, "Lord, my heart is ready. My heart is ready. Whatever you want, Psalm,
Yep.
whatever
The
you want,
psalm.
Lord, my heart is ready." And when I heard the second not guilty, so as we find the defendant on count one not guilty, then count two not guilty, I just collapsed in my hands and
Yeah.
cried and weep in joy. I look back, my wife's weeping. I hug my attorneys. I tell them how much I love them.
Yeah.
I tell all those that were close to me how much I love them and how thankful I am for them. Then I looked at the judge and I
Hmm.
said, "Thank you, Judge." And
Hmm.
he looks at me and he says, "No, thank you, Mr. Houck." And you have this awareness that the judge was almost grateful for this verdict.
Yeah.
So the first media person says, "How do you feel?" I said, "It was just tremendous amount of relief."
Yeah.
Just about relief and just joy,
Hmm.
and just wanted to proclaim Christ in the midst of all of it, and we did, and
Yeah.
because he's the victor, not us, we're just he already won it, and now we're with him,
Yeah.
on that cross, and so for me, the faith journey, it brought me to a place of sadness, sorrow, and almost near despair at times, and outwardly. Inwardly, but that was the place where I met Jesus, and that was the place where I grew more like Jesus.
Hmm.
That was the place where I became more like Christ by going to that inner sorrow, that inner space that no one knows. That's where Jesus met me and took me to a new level of intimacy with him. And that you can't explain that.
Right.
It's something if I could thank the Biden administration, I would, for that reason alone,
Yeah.
right? Because they brought me to a deeper depth of knowledge of who I am as a child of God and a faithful Catholic Christian.
Right. Yeah. St. Thomas More had a prayer that he wrote in the Tower of London. And I'll never, the end of it is just burned into my heart that he wrote, um, that I will love my enemies, for the brothers of Joseph could never have done him any good by their love. So what they did by their hatred, and when they sent him to Egypt. So speaking of, it's those who try to hurt us the most who bring us so close to the heart of Jesus Christ. And like you said, for Catholics, suffering it's it's not it's not evil in itself, but that God brings such great good out of it. And what an honor. I mean, blessed are they when men persecute you and revile you, and you've been given that gift.
Yeah.
Um,
For theirs is
how
the kingdom of heaven, right? So
theirs is the kingdom of
that's
heaven.
what we're experiencing,
Yeah,
right?
the everlasting kingdom. It's not passing away. I mean, I love my country, but United States of America won't last forever.
That's right.
Kingdom of heaven, it's
That's
there
right. I mean,
forever. So you chose the right kingdom. Uh, right. Um, so I guess I hate to leave all of, this wonderful experience, but looking ahead, God's not done with you. He's not done with any of us, right? So what comes next? I heard there's some rumors that you're going to be at the State of the
yeah.
Union. State of the
Yeah.
Union 2023. How did that come about?
Right. So here we are the day before that, and I got
Yeah.
a call. I got a call last week, a day or two after the arrest, from Congressman Scott Perry, who's not far from my district here in Pennsylvania. And
Is the head of the Freedom Caucus for those who aren't familiar with
yeah,
that.
that's right. I didn't know that at the time. I knew he was a good guy. I knew he was a brigadier general, but um, he invited me, and then I said, "Well, can I bring my wife?" And they had to get an extra ticket for us.
Oh,
So we're
they
gonna
got
be
one for
going there.
her?
Yeah,
Oh,
they
that's
got one for her. So
that's
we're going
fantastic.
down tomorrow for the State of the. I said, you know what, Erica, I had a vision right after I was arrested that
Mhm.
I would be at the State of the Union. Now I'm not a mystic.
No.
Did have a
Wow.
vision. I didn't think it'd be during this administration though. Truth be told, I just thought it was down the road,
You're like, maybe in a few years, a few
Yeah, that's
administrations
right.
down the road, they're like, no, we want you there this year. All the
That's why
guardian
I listened.
angels, they're
Why
like,
do you
no,
want
this
me?
year's good.
Why do you want me? Because you're
Yeah.
the face of the weaponization of the government.
Yeah.
So we want you there. And they said, everyone's going to know you're there. So I know I'm going to be a political pawn. And you know what? I'm okay with that because
Mhm.
light needs to be shed on this dark place. And
Yeah.
you and I both, went to Catholic U. We grew up in
Mhm.
that area. We know the Capitol Hill. We know the darkness that is there. There's
Right.
an image of Catholic U in the Basilica of Jesus in a mosaic, and he's got this perturbed look on his face, and he's
Yeah.
looking down North Capitol Street. That's for a reason. That's why the
Yeah,
orders
it's on
did that.
purpose.
And so
Mhm.
I know that I'm going to be used by God in a mighty way. But we have an interview with the Judiciary Committee on February 22nd, and
Awesome.
that's in advance of a potential hearing
Mhm.
for the subcommittee that's being established that Jim Jordan's chairing, and these
Mhm.
guys, Chip Roy, and these guys are all a part of.
Right.
So now that's going to begin the process of investigating all of this, and so
Yeah.
hopefully my testimony will be a benefit and bless others.
Yeah, I hope so very much because you weren't the only person charged under the
That's right.
PACE Act. As we've covered before, there were over 25, I believe the number was 26 by the end of the year last year, of pro-life activists who were charged with this federal crime for standing in front of abortion clinics and praying.
Right.
Well, we're going to be praying for that. Obviously, Catholic Vote's going to be covering all of that. We have our guys on the Hill, so look out for them. I'll have to get you in touch with our dear friends Tom McCluskey on the Hill.
Sure.
And thank you for not just, you could just take your verdict and go home and enjoy, a lovely life with your family. But thank you for taking it the next step because it is something God's given you. So a couple of a couple more questions if you
Sure.
have time.
I do.
So something that I get asked a lot as a Catholic who's, involved in the pro-life movement is how do you involve your children in the fight to end abortion? And there are a lot of parents who are, they're pro-life, they're going to vote for pro-life politicians, but they object to things like bringing my children to pray in an abortion clinic. How would you talk to them about ways that they can, one, why it's important to bring your children, to involve your children and your whole family in this effort? And what are some of the ways that maybe they can ease toward that, becoming more comfortable with that idea?
Sure. Well, I've taken all 7 of my children to an abortion mill. It's not something I do regularly. And I strategically took my 12-year-old son, more regularly. So that should be a message in itself. But I would say this, that women who are going through a difficult or unplanned pregnancy or something like that need to see the joy of children. They need to see children, even though it may be hard for them. They need to see the children who want to help. and all my children want to help. They know why they're there. Maybe not the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old, but they all know why we're there. That we're praying for babies, that we want to help mommies, and we want to help dad. And
Yeah.
so, their presence is such a gift because they are the gift of the unplanned pregnancy, the ultimate. The child, every child is a gift. So, we want to bring humanity to the depersonification, the dehumanization of life in the womb, right? And so the children do that. Men need to do that. I always say to myself, I can handle the questions
Mm-hmm.
and I can handle the bad behavior. There's a lot of bad behavior in the city of Philadelphia. My kids probably see things, saw things. My son was taught the F word by a Planned Parenthood escort. He was.
Right.
And
Yep.
you know what? I have to let go of that. I mean, we're homeschooled. Look, we're protecting their innocence, but I can control the narrative. So when my son looks at a rainbow flag in the city of Philadelphia, that's the area where this is, he says, "Dad, what's that?" And I'll say, "Well, you know what that rainbow stands for in the Bible, right?" He said, "Yeah, it's God's covenant with his people." I said, "Okay, Mark, that rainbow flag celebrates everything that was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you remember that? And you remember what was happening?" "Yes." "Well, that flag celebrates all that." See, now I can control the
Yep.
narrative. I can explain it the way that he can understand it. And I think parents need to recognize, yeah, there's some bad behavior down there. And I think there's also a shield of protection that not only their guardian angels, but God puts around these little minds and little hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Most of this stuff's going to go right over their head. Someone
Yep.
has something negative to say, and they've never been around it. It's just going to go right over their head. So you kind of got to say, hey, they're not even going to get that. But
Yeah.
let's say they do. Let's say you have a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. Well, now you have a conversation. Now you can talk. And now you can be parent. And now you can be, you can control that messaging. The culture, the hypersexualized culture is going to tell them what they want them to hear. And it's not going to be what a good parent wants to teach. So I would just encourage parents, don't be afraid. Pray with your kids. Go in a spirit of prayer. Pray the rosary. And you don't have to stay for 3 hours. Just go down, pray a rosary, try to hand out some literature, whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
then leave, right? You don't have to be there all day.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you, their presence goes such a long way. And you know what, Erica? It goes longer, not with the abortion-minded people going in for an appointment,
Mm-hmm.
but the escorts and the people working at
Mm.
Parenthood need to see those children more than anything.
Yeah.
Because that's who they're
That's
afraid
true.
of. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that we often forget about is that we're there not just for the mothers. Obviously,
Right.
saving babies is the first priority.
Sure.
Serving the mothers in order that they can care for their children, top priority. But we're also there because those escorts and those people working inside, those are souls beloved of
Right.
God, and they are in hell. And so we're there for them too. It's
That's
not
right.
just, oh, well, no one came today for an abortion. Well, that's okay,
That's right. Those are good
Um,
days.
yeah.
We bring the babies home. We've been a part of the saving of many lives. Thanks be to
Uh-huh.
God. These women and men have come to our homes, and my children have held these children, which is
Ugh,
great to have
yeah.
that joy. And then they'll be there, and I'll say, you know what, my wife and I and my children will parent your child for you till you're ready to parent this child. Right? That's the sincerity of the pro-life movement. We're here
It is.
before, during, and after. We're not leaving you. We'll walk
Yep.
with you every step of the way if you want us to.
Yeah, and I think that was some of the irony in the coverage after the Dobbs decision in the mainstream secular media was that the accusation there was everyone shouting pro-lifers, they only care about babies until they're born and blah, blah. And
Right.
I grew up in the pro-life movement. That's the opposite of
Right.
what I see and what I've experienced. And your family's a testimony to that. So thank you for that as well. I was going to ask, too, if you could just tell us a little bit about the King's Men. This
Sure.
looks like an amazing apostolate, and just how did it get started? What do you do, and where can we find you?
Sure. Well, the easiest first part of that answer is thekingsmen.org, and
Oh, that's easy.
that's where people can go and check
I'll
it
drop
out.
it in the show notes for
Oh,
anyone
great.
listening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thekingsmen.org. So we started in '04, and that was just men wanting to be better men. Me and a couple other guys, and I
Mhm.
was a single guy at the time, and I was just trying to be a holy man, but I was struggling with that. But I
Mhm.
knew I needed some sharpening, iron sharpening iron, right? I needed that. And so we just came together in a small men's group. Well, that evolved in '06 to a full-time apostolate.
Mm.
which I left the pro-life movement per se. I never left it, but I left working for another organization. And then we started our own, which was to address the issue of this crisis in masculinity that the culture is dealing with, toxic masculinity that's now put out there. So it was authentically Catholic, unapologetically masculine, and men coming together on a weekly basis to grow in holiness. Well, that group has since grown to all over the country, around Europe, and some military bases around the country. And then we have a retreat offering for what we do. We help men, go deeper than just a weekly meeting, but just go deeper on a more intensive weekend. And we have healing retreats for men and outdoor experiential retreats for men that we do. And they can find that all at the website. And we continue to call men into action. So fight the cultural evils, the cultural war, abortion, pornography, defense of traditional marriage. Those are some of the main ones that we're involved in.
That's fantastic. What ages in particular do you minister to?
Sure. So when they come to retreats, we'll take ages 11 and up. And usually a minor has to be with a parent or a guardian. And all
Sure.
of our men's groups, the ones that meet at the parishes around the country, they're 18 and up because it's adults talking about,
Yeah.
important things.
Adult stuff.
We
Yeah.
can't have minors there. So that would be the only. But I do lead a high school group with my co-op that I facilitate. And these are all kids that I know, and the parents are okay with it, and they let me teach the class. And
Yeah.
that's the only one, though. But it's a high school group.
That's fantastic. Well, I would encourage everyone to go check that out. Lord knows we need strong men in our culture, especially strong Catholic men. So thank you for that.
And yeah,
Is there anything else you'd like to say or,
sure.
yeah, share with us?
Sure. I just want to thank your audience and Catholic Vote. I mean, like my kid, what was so great, Erica? The Catholic Vote tournament, that was so fun. It was
It was so fun.
It was fun. It was such a nice distraction
Oh,
for
good.
my kids. Like it was just like something fun for them to do, and it wasn't heavy. It was fun, and so kudos to you guys. That was such a great thing.
Well, just
And
so that, and for the listeners, so
yeah,
that he's referring to our heroes and zeros. Every month we put out Catholic
right.
heroes, and then Catholics who might have, betrayed the faith, to put it mildly. And at the end of the year, we have a heroes and zeros tournament for Hero of the Year. And we were so excited, Mark, because, we get good participation, we get good feedback. But this year, we ended up in the final round. I think it was Mark. It was your whole family, actually. It was the Houck family
Yeah.
versus Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
And we were watching the votes come in. We had over 70,000 votes come in. And what we would see is this, you'll love this. So we would see Ron DeSantis creeping ahead a little bit. And we would get these chunks of vote. We'd be like, okay, his office is like online and they're all just like putting votes in. And then the next morning, you guys would be ahead again. And we're like, go Houck family. And sure enough, I mean, it was a no
Oh,
contest by the end. So sorry, Ron. Maybe
yeah,
you'll be
yeah.
a winner
No,
in other ways. But
they'll do well in other votes. But yeah, I just want to draw your attention and your audience to the whole world has been supporting us. It's so generous in their time, their talent, in the sense of what they've offered back to the ministry and the family with their own tithing and giving.
wow.
But the whole world has been praying for us. Uganda, a village in Uganda, sent us a message. But here's the best thing for your audience. Listen to this one. I got a note right after I was arrested by a man who said, "I'm a lousy Catholic, but seeing what's happening to you is making me go back to the church." And I'll tell you what,
It was
that
all worth
made
it.
it all worth
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
One guy, one soul,
One soul.
one soul.
That's
So
fantastic.
sign me up. I'm done. Right?
All right. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation,
Thank you.
and you have our support all the way. We'll be looking for your face on State of the Union coverage.
Oh, yeah, right. Good luck.
Yes. But we'll know you're there.
Yes, yes.
All right.
Thank you so much, Eric. Great to meet you. Thank you.
Hey guys, wanted to take a second to tell you about Catholic Vote. LOOPcast is a product of Catholic Vote, America's top Catholic advocacy organization. Our mission is to inspire every Catholic in America to live out the truths of our faith in public life. To learn more, visit CatholicVote.org or click the link in the description. All right, welcome back from the interview. Mark is the man. Really honored to have
That
him on
was
the
so
show.
cool.
It's crazy that we're even at the place now where we have this platform to just reach out to guys like Mark Houck and be like, hey, come talk to us so we get to share with everyone. It was a
Yeah,
real
it was just
surreal
Yeah,
moment.
just
Like I remember
to hear.
I remember just like concepting the podcast and just like, Mercer, please let me do this. Please let me do this. I know I can do it. They're like, all right, I'm good. And like in the back of my head, I'm like, man, it'd be so cool if one day we could talk to people that are the like total focus of everything we're trying to do here. And they're going to just pick up
Right on the
phone.
front lines.
So sorry,
Mhm.
Erica, what were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say, probably one of my top 5 experiences working for CatholicVote so far, talking to him and just letting him tell the story, because you can read accounts of the trial and you can read the accounts of the arrest, and I've read dozens of them, but to hear it from him, the firsthand account was just so moving and genuine. I hope everyone enjoyed that and just takes away from it that courage and that joy that he exuded throughout the
Well,
whole
just when he
conversation.
talked about how difficult it was, for his family, and that they found happiness and joy out of the fact that members of CatholicVote from across the country were voting for him as the hero of the year. Like, oh my gosh, that's
awesome.
that's sweet. I mean, it's like, what little we could do. Like, obviously, we're praying. All these people are praying for you and your family too, Mark. But I don't know. That was just kind of neat to see. It was like it was a digital way to kind of show how many people were praying for him. So it was really kind of neat.
Yeah, totally. And so for my Twilight Zone this week, I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm going to go with the Chinese spy balloon. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come out and say that is the dumbest story I've
Thank you.
seen, at least in the last year, maybe my life. What a waste of time. Everyone's obsessed with it. It's a balloon. Like, let's move on. Okay. So I'm going to take the
I
high
don't know.
road.
I think it should have been a quick story. Someone in Montana should have saw it and shot the
I
darn thing
know.
down.
Come on, Montanans. Should never have made it to South Carolina.
John Dunn would have
I
shot it
was
down.
disappointed.
Just going to say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I know
that's
what
a
happened. I
that's
thought we
a
had a good
principle.
governor there.
That's a principal play. No spy balloon for my Twilight Zone.
No spy balloon. Thank you, Tom.
I instead went very intellectual with Disney cartoons. So there is a Disney cartoon, and I personally, like, I described the sensation of watching this portion of it as like feeling tight in the chest. It was like an uncomfortable, abrasive experience for a grown man. And the show that I'm referring to is called The Proud Family, Prouder Than Ever. It's a Proud Family reboot.
I think it's Louder and Prouder.
Louder and Proud.
Reboot.
Might be worse than the title I just said. So
Which says it all.
it's a Disney show from the 2000s. It was a depiction of a suburban African-American family. And from all accounts, a lovely show, something that taught people about friendship, bullying, life lessons. So a lot of people look back very fondly on it. And so this reboot comes along. It's on Disney Plus. And in this episode, there is a play being performed. And I thought it'd be cool, as a resident Gen Z of this podcast, we could do a live reaction to this portion of the show. Josh rolled his eyes when I even suggested, but I'm here, and it's happened.
I think Josh even made an ageist comment
Yeah.
when you suggested reacts, but
Which we consider
he's
acceptable.
going to have the most fun of all of us.
And I called HR, and she said, you can react to it. I was like, okay. So we're going to run it now. I'm going to run this live. And here we go.
This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. Tilled this land from sea to sea to sea. First there was rice, tobacco, sugar cane. Then Whitney did his thing and cotton became king. And we were its soldiers, 4 million strong. Fighting for America's freedoms, even though we remained America's slaves. Built this country. The descendants of slaves continue to build it. Slaves built this country. And we, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering. And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy that America was founded with and still has not atoned for. Slaves built this country.
Whoa.
Not only field hands,
Obviously.
but carpenters, masons, blacksmiths, musicians, inventors built cities from Jamestown to New Orleans to Banneker, Washington. 40 acres and a mule.
Whoa.
We'll take the 40 acres, keep the mule. We made your families rich. From the southern plantation heirs to the northern
yes.
bankers to the New England ship owners, the founding fathers, former presidents, current senators, The Illuminati, the New World Order.
That's my favorite part.
Oh my God.
Illuminati, baby.
Didn't they say Lincoln freed the slaves?
But slaves were men.
And women. And only we can free ourselves.
Lincoln didn't free the
Emancipation
slaves.
is not freedom. Jim Crow,
Oh, that's
segregation,
cute.
redlining, public schools, feeding private prisons, where we become slaves again. As we celebrate Juneteenth for the umpteenth time, our account is still outstanding.
Umpteenth time? Was it like
What?
4 times already?
Yeah.
Slaves built this country, and we
Are you
demand
upset
our 40
about that?
acres and a mule. Bump that. You can keep the mule.
Keep the 40.
We're taking our freedom.
Whoa.
I want 40 acres.
Whoa.
Whoa. Oh, gosh.
Right.
Whoa.
Guys,
So edgy.
what do we?
So edgy.
Gosh, was that
I love it.
entertaining?
Right? Why not?
Child cartoon for you?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, it's just kind of a unique experience to have Hollywood lecture at me. I haven't had that in a while. Ooh. So edgy, so cutting edge, so brave. You know, it is interesting. I do like the idea of reparations, though. Like, we should do something because of the horrible way we treated blacks as slaves. There should be some payment, and I thought there was. There's a whole lot of blood spilt. It's like, you want a reparations check, go to Gettysburg. That's where you can cash it. I mean, give me a freaking break with this stuff. Like, why don't we punish and tax, people who came from, I don't know, Poland in the 1940s. They had a lot to do with slavery. They came into this country after the World War II. Let's tax them a little extra because the cartoon told us so. It's just like absolutely asinine. And so the Vietnamese and the Hmong from Southeast Asia that came to the United States in the last 30 or 40 years, like let's make sure we tax them so we can pay reparations to people. I don't understand. It's it's absolutely asinine.
Yeah, and the whole tone of it is just, I mean, it's a show targeted for 9 to 12-year-old kids. And it just comes across as just some angry adult who has an agenda and just wants to drill it. It doesn't even, I think, Tom, you and I were talking about this a little earlier, how, Disney cartoons and Pixar, when you're talking to kids 9 to 12 years old, you want to have a little lightheartedness, a little gentleness and kindness, and help them to, you can confront tough issues, but not with this. The tone of that was just so
sloganeering.
Angry
They want to
and
create
sloganeering.
robots.
Yeah, it's like, we're not even pretending anymore. Here's some propaganda for your kids to watch. And I mean, just adults overcompensating for inferiority complexes all over the place right there. It was just
And one of the
such ugly art, bad art.
right, and one of the ladies who was in charge
Try.
of putting this on was actually part of a leaked Disney meeting, talking about how I believe she
Yes.
had a transgender child and a pansexual child.
Well, and she herself is
What a
biromantic,
coincidence,
queer
too.
questioning or
Wow,
something.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, like young kids.
Who would have thought they'd produce
and
that?
she promised that Disney was going to start queerifying content. And so for those people that thought, oh, well, maybe, Disney's kind of reeling from getting smacked down by DeSantis. No. If you still
Yeah,
have Disney
not-
Plus subscription, I would think long and hard about what you're supporting. I mean, this is not the
I
only
think
example.
I think what they're doing since the DeSantis smackdown is pulling back, at least on the big movie releases, what they're doing. But, a lot of their programming that on Disney Plus, they want the kids to be able to still see that stuff. So it's not like they're suddenly reforming themselves and going back to what they had even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I saw that clip that you just showed us there. I mean, there's another clip that went around the internet in response to that. It was from 20 years ago. And it showed all the Disney stars talking about how much they love the American flag. And it's right
Yeah.
after the 9/11 attacks. And it's like, gosh, wasn't that nice for
Times have
10
changed.
minutes there where
Yeah.
popular culture wasn't offended by the country that they lived in?
Right.
Hollywood didn't find it repulsive to be an American for about 10 minutes. It was kind of nice.
Right.
It would be nice to go back to that
Yeah.
for a while.
So
I love to. I was looking this up. I just want to add, I was looking this up and I was like, gosh, I wonder where this show ranks in the Disney universe. And so I'm looking it up. The parenting magazines are the #1 show on Disney, The Proud Family, #1 in the children's. But then you actually go on to, I think it was IMDb, And then the Disney Plus channel itself has like most watched shows. It's like number 47 out of
Yeah.
53. So it's not doing well.
I have the reviews. So I went to go see it. Am I the only one maybe thinking that this is off-putting and a little aggressive? And so there
Yeah.
were some people who really genuinely were fans of the Proud Family back in the day. It's kind of similar to how I feel about some old Pixar movies. Like I loved Toy Story growing up. I loved Cars. I loved A
Right.
Bug's Life.
Well, you don't still?
I mean, I still do. Major correction. I
Yeah.
still do. Incredibles, it's all awesome.
Come on, man.
And
But yes, the nostalgia.
I have
You
a
have
nos-
like the nostalgia.
Right.
It was a good,
But I remember
informative
being able to go
show.
see those movies even with my parents, and my parents being like, oh man, like there was even things in that made me feel good, like it was just good messages and it was uplifting and it wasn't too heavy, kind of hit all the right heartstrings. So I found this was my favorite review. This show has 4.8 stars out of 10 on IMDb, and you get reviews like this. You can rate it 1 out of 10. Someone rated it 1 out of 10 and then said as their name 0 stars. And here's the review. Pure hate attempting to be empowering. Reparations ? For what? Being born ? No, just no. You ain't proud. You ain't even begging. You demanding a free ride, job up, and earn your stuff. There are no words to discuss the disgusting blatant white hate. Not paid reparations? Well, we know that's no longer taught in school now. Not atoned. We'll see above again. History is still rewritten, I see. So, where are the reparations for the Irish? Are we going to move back to Africa and England and Mexico, Asia, etc., and give the land back to the natives? You built this country? No, it was conquered like every strip of land on this planet from shore to shore for the entire history of the world. Proud's a little too
Yeah.
proud and definitely loud for all the wrong reasons. Shout out to 0 stars.
Yeah, he knows his history.
end on that.
Or she.
Erica.
This week, we returned to New England, my own home, and we have state Democrats in Massachusetts, so you know it's going to be good. They want to offer prisoners reduced sentences for donating their organs. And I'm not talking like after you die, your organs will go to science. I'm talking
Josh's
like
face was
now.
so good.
So this is a new bill. This is HD 3822. If you, a prisoner, go under the knife to give up a kidney or some bone marrow, you could get up to a year of your prison sentence reduced. The Democrat who introduced the bill, State Representative Carlos Gonzalez, who's a Democrat, he said that this bill will restore bodily autonomy for prisoners. And, he was inspired by a close friend who requires dialysis 3 to 4 times a week and is awaiting a kidney transplant. And Massachusetts has a shortage of people willing to give up their organs. And he writes, in my view, there is no compelling reason to bar inmates from this, which they're not because they could voluntarily give their organs. One of our goals is to provide information and education on the disproportionate number of Blacks and Latinos dying while awaiting donors. So not only are prisoners going to get this quid pro quo for giving up the kidney, but it's also racist if they don't, apparently. One of the things I love about this story is that one of the loudest voices against this bill, which is obviously problematic on so many levels, but one of our loudest allies is the Abolish Prisons movement in Massachusetts, Black and Pink Massachusetts, which supports LGBTQ and HIV positive people impacted by the criminal legal system, is all up in arms about this, that this is objectifying people who are incarcerated. It's manipulating them, and it's
Yeah, they're
weaponizing
true.
their
That's right.
bodies. They're right. I'm like, yes, me and the Abolish Prisons movement were on the same
Handshake.
side of the card on this. Yeah, handshake Abolish Prisons movement.
It's a
Oh my
rarity.
goodness.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it just comes to this.
Where do I
this,
start?
This
do
modern
you
view,
start?
though, it's a very libertarian, in the wrong sense, corrupted libertarian, licentious view that, like, you should be able to do whatever you want with your own body. And so, like, I guess the next thing, take it to the next level. Like, what would if they allowed for this? What would stop prisoners from saying, I'll agree to have sex, and be a prostitute
Right.
in order to get time off of jail? Like,
Right.
wouldn't the same arguments apply? I mean, we as Catholics would say donating a kidney is not immoral and prostitution is immoral. So we would obviously have a problem with that. But what would these advocates who are calling for this, how would they say no to that? I mean, because ultimately they don't think anything's wrong with either one.
Right.
Right.
And can you imagine that? It would just be an absurdity. And I don't know. I just find it we've become so detached from a normal Judeo-Christian view of the human person and its inherent dignity. I mean, I see this in commercials. It's like, it's just so gross, like commercials for hygiene products, and they just emphasize in the most nasty way possible.
Yeah.
And they're like, and they just basically have no, like, this is how
It's
we're going to
soft
advertise
porn.
it. We're going to be
Right.
gross and crass, and you're stupid if you have any objection to this. Because that's the problem in America today, that people are a little bit too
Right.
at you
Yeah.
for your craziness.
Yeah. And I just find too that with this story, just one, the whole transactional thing with your organs, because obviously as Catholics, we see it as it's a heroic act to freely, with no strings attached, just give up your kidney for a friend, or even better, a perfect stranger, or, bone marrow transplants, all of that. Super heroic act. But to reduce that to this transactional sort of trading parts of my body to get days off of my jail sentence, it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real about that. It's gross. And this isn't even, we're not even talking about an equal partnership where, this is a market, right? Where it's like the free market of selling your organs, right? This is where you have criminals incarcerated by the state. So don't tell me that somehow they're making this choice freely and they're just gonna
Yeah.
this is purely transactional. There's also
the
a power play.
The power dynamic
The-
is disgusting.
The power dynamic.
It's
it's disgusting.
it reminds me too, is like these kind of things. And if you're wondering, like, well, maybe someone could get out a little bit sooner, like, and they want to do that, it's fine. Think about this though. When you have power dynamics like that, it reminds me of euthanasia arguments. Say, you're no longer, your utility to the state and to society is lowered because you're physically weaker and you take up more medicine, you require more surgeries. Like, it's this kind of thinking that's like, okay, so, we're in charge of who gets what, communism. So, you're just not going to get it, right? You're less valuable. You mean less to me. And so it's a dangerous, slippery slope when it's like you have mess up power dynamics like this and you offer an odd incentive program to get people to give up their organs to get out of jail that you put them in. So it's
Right.
like, it's not free will at all. And it's a very shallow transactional way of viewing human beings. Like, this is treating people like less than human beings. So
Right.
yeah, definitely Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Weird.
Josh, what you got?
Well, I mean, lawmakers in Oklahoma are trying to protect children from, these large corporations that want to try to convince them they need to change their sex from male to female or female to male.
Well, not
I'm always convinced that's
try.
big pharma money behind all this, right? That's
Oh,
not
always.
the Twilight Zone. The lawmakers, God bless them, they're trying to stop this and saying we shouldn't have all this gender transition stuff going on, these semi-permanent health surgeries or treatments to young kids. That's not the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone is that apparently January 6th gets transitioned to February 6th in Oklahoma, because what we saw was
Well
a
played.
group of
Well played.
transgender rights advocates storming the Oklahoma State Capitol and shouting outside the House chamber as these lawmakers are considering this legislation to protect these children. And it just strikes me as so hilarious, because I thought storming a Capitol was an affront to democracy, an attack on our values, an attack on the Constitution, but apparently they can do this in Oklahoma if they're on the right side of things. And the media says transgender rights protesters gather
Oh my
at
gosh.
Oklahoma Capitol.
So brave.
That's the Associated Press for
So
you,
brave.
right?
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
so again, it's just the lopsided coverage we always get from the mainstream media. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And in this case, what are these lawmakers trying to do? Are they trying to stuff their, pockets with some, special interest bill from oil companies or something like that? No, they're trying to say, hey, big pharma shouldn't make, millions of dollars trying to convince everyone and all these kids in the state that they need a transition. Like,
Right.
let's take a let's take a step here. All right. And let's look at what other countries like England and Finland and Sweden are doing. They're like, wait a minute. I don't know if we should really push our children into these life-altering surgeries.
Josh, be clear about what the bill would have done, right? The bill is to ban transgender surgeries and drugs for kids under 18, so minors. That's all that was.
That's right. It bans gender transition surgeries and therapies for minors. Obviously, if you're 18 years or older and you still want to do this,
right?
I guess you have a right to. But like when it comes to kids, it's like we don't let 16-year-olds purchase cigarettes because it's like, that's kind of life-altering. You could get addicted to that and you could damage your body.
Right. There's so many things we protect our kids from.
Yeah, I love it when the deep red state of Oklahoma is more aligned with progressive Finland than the progressive themselves.
Yeah.
Who just love to be like, oh, Finland's so awesome, Scandinavia.
Scandinavia, baby.
And the Oklahoma guys were like, yeah, they're actually right about trans stuff, so we should do
I'll
that.
take the Oklahoma-Finnish alliance over these crazy protesters.
Let's do it.
All right, and that does it for this edition of the Loopcast. So please, if you like what we're doing here, drop us a review. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. You can find us on YouTube as well. We have all our episodes up there. If you want to see us react live to crazy Disney skits, that's a new thing that we do here. So seriously.
Josh loves it.
First off, once again, really honored and grateful to Mark Houck and his family for sacrificing for us, really, for Catholics over the country and taking the time to come on the show. Really want to give as many shout outs as we possibly can. Truly honored. And we're praying for you guys. Thank you for all the support, and we'll see you on the next one.